The police officer was writing a single data ticket when she said, "If you weren't married, I'd add my." The flashing red and blue lights painted the empty roadside in heartbreaking colors as the exhausted father slowly pulled his aging pickup truck onto the shoulder. His little daughter, curled up under a faded pink blanket in the passenger seat, stirred in her sleep without opening her eyes. The man closed them for a brief second, knowing that another ticket might be the final blow to a life that already felt as though it was falling apart. What happened over the next 15 minutes would change not only his future, but also the lives of everyone who witnessed a simple act of compassion that no one expected. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still has the power to change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us the world still has good people in it. Daniel Harper had never imagined that life could unravel so quickly. 3 years earlier he had been living what many would call an ordinary but happy life. He worked long hours as a construction supervisor, came home every evening to his wife Emily, and spent every spare minute teaching their daughter Lily how to ride a bicycle, bake cookies, or chase butterflies in the small backyard behind their modest home. Then illness entered their lives without warning. Emily fought with every ounce of strength she had, but some battles cannot be won by courage alone. By the time Lily was 5 years old, Daniel stood beside a hospital bed holding his wife's trembling hand while promising her something that would become the purpose of his entire life. He promised he would raise their daughter with enough love for both parents. From that day forward, Daniel stopped thinking about himself. He woke before sunrise every morning, packed lunches, braided Lily's hair using skills he had painfully learned from online videos, worked 10-hour shifts whenever construction jobs were available, rushed home to cook dinner, helped with homework, washed clothes late into the night, and somehow found enough energy to read bedtime stories before falling asleep in the chair beside her bed. Money became tighter with every passing month. Medical bills from Emily's treatment swallowed their savings. Inflation pushed rent higher. Construction work slowed during the rainy season, leaving Daniel scrambling for temporary jobs that barely covered groceries. More than once he quietly skipped dinner so Lily could have seconds without realizing there wasn't enough food for both of them. Still, he never complained. To Lily, her father remained a superhero who somehow fixed broken toys, scared away nightmares, and always smiled, even when sadness hid behind his tired eyes. One cold Tuesday afternoon, Daniel received a phone call every parent fears. Lily had developed a high fever while at school. He left work immediately, knowing that leaving early would cost him the remainder of the day's wages. His supervisor frowned but said nothing. Daniel drove across town, picked up his daughter, and took her directly to the nearest urgent care clinic. The doctor reassured him it wasn't life-threatening, but Lily needed antibiotics immediately and plenty of rest. Daniel nodded gratefully, paid the consultation fee with the last money in his checking account, and headed toward the pharmacy before it closed. As evening settled over the town, heavy clouds rolled across the sky, bringing sheets of rain that blurred the highway. Daniel glanced repeatedly between the road and his sleeping daughter, whose flushed cheeks worried him more than the storm outside. He pressed the accelerator just a little harder than usual. He didn't notice the speed limit had dropped. The police lights appeared almost instantly. Daniel's heart sank. He carefully parked the truck, switched off the engine, and looked at Lily. She remained asleep, hugging the worn teddy bear her mother had given her before passing away. Daniel whispered an apology she couldn't hear. Officer Sarah Mitchell approached with calm professionalism. She had served on the police force for nearly 12 years and had seen every excuse imaginable from speeding drivers. Some blamed emergencies that never happened. Others became angry before she even reached their window. This driver was different. The first thing she noticed wasn't the old truck or the expired registration sticker. It was the little girl sleeping peacefully under the blanket. The second thing she noticed was Daniel's face. Not fear. Not frustration. Just complete exhaustion. Deep lines surrounded eyes that looked as though they hadn't enjoyed a full night's sleep in years. Sarah politely requested his license and registration. Daniel handed over the documents with trembling hands. Everything about him suggested someone carrying a weight far heavier than a traffic citation. As Sarah returned to her patrol car, she reviewed his record. No criminal history. No reckless driving. No previous moving violations. Only one expired registration notice from several months earlier. Department policy required her to issue multiple citations. She sighed quietly. Rules existed for good reasons, but experience had taught her that every file number belonged to a real human being with a story. Returning to the truck, she gently asked where they had been. Daniel hesitated for only a moment before answering honestly. He explained Lily's fever. The clinic visit. The prescription waiting at the pharmacy. The construction work he had left early. The medical bills. His wife's passing. The endless balancing act of trying to be both mother and father to a little girl who still whispered goodnight to her mother's photograph every evening. He spoke without asking for sympathy. Without making excuses. Simply telling the truth. Sarah listened quietly. She glanced toward Lily again. The child stirred in her sleep and softly murmured, "Daddy." Daniel instinctively reached over and adjusted the blanket around her shoulders before she settled once more. It was such a small gesture. Yet Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. She remembered growing up with a single mother who had worked 2 jobs after Sarah's father abandoned the family. She remembered watching her own mother hide unpaid bills inside kitchen drawers so her children wouldn't worry. She recognized that same determination sitting before her now. Technically, Daniel had committed several violations. Technically, he deserved every citation. But sometimes justice and compassion meet at the same crossroads. Sarah looked at the citation book resting in her hands. She began writing. Daniel lowered his head. Every stroke of her pen sounded like another financial burden he could barely survive. When she finished, she paused for several seconds before speaking. She looked directly at Daniel and quietly said that if he weren't already carrying enough responsibility for an entire family, she would have added every fine the law allowed. Instead, she told him that what she saw wasn't a reckless man, it was a father doing everything he could to keep his little girl safe and loved. She handed him the paper. Daniel stared at it in confusion. Instead of multiple expensive citations, there was only a written warning and a reminder to renew his registration as soon as he was able. Tucked inside the folded paper was something else. A small handwritten note. It contained the address of a local community organization that quietly helped struggling parents with emergency expenses, groceries, school supplies, and medical assistance. Sarah had volunteered there for years, knowing they often stepped in before families reached the breaking point. She told Daniel not to think of it as charity. She asked him to think of it as neighbors refusing to let another neighbor fall. Daniel's eyes filled with tears he had spent years refusing to shed. For the first time since Emily's death, someone had looked beyond his circumstances and seen the man still fighting with everything he had left. As he drove away toward the pharmacy, he had no idea that the simple note folded inside that warning would begin a chain of events that neither he nor Officer Sarah Mitchell could possibly imagine. The hardest seasons of his life were not yet over. But for the first time in years, hope had quietly climbed into the passenger seat beside him.